Hi everybody, Randy with Drag Racing's Golden Era. We are here at the Lions Automobilia Foundation inside the Lions Museum, the Lions Drag Strip Museum. And sitting with us here, of all people to have with us, is Carl Olson. And we've had Carl on before, so it's good to have him back. Carl, as many of you know, was the last winner of Top Fuel at the last race at Lions Drag Strip, December 2nd, 1972. But Carl's involvement with the museum is not just as a participant of the past. He's a board member here and helps to run the operation. So Carl, thanks for sitting down with us. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask you is, this thing as it came about, how did your involvement happen in this? How did you get involved in the museum side of this?
When the museum was originally a concept of Rick Lorenzen, who's the owner of a company called Price Transfer, a trucking company and freight forwarding company here in Rancho Dominguez and Carson and Wilmington, California, part of the Los Angeles Harbor Complex, Wilmington, San Pedro, Compton, that area. Rick Lorenzen came from a family that owned a Texaco gas station in Wilmington that was pretty much a stone's throw distance from Lions Drag Strip. Okay. And because he grew up around his father's Texaco station, which at that time also did mechanical work and whatever, he was a car nut, a gearhead guy. And he was totally immersed in the Southern California motorsports movement, and he was a guy who attended the races at Lions Drag Strip on a very regular basis, pretty much every Saturday night and a lot of times on Sunday as well. So he pretty much grew up there and had just a huge passion for Lions Drag Strip, and as a result, years later, when he amassed an amazing collection of cars, he's probably the premier Willys car enthusiast anywhere in the world. I think his current collection here at the foundation numbers around 52 different Willys cars, pretty much one of every style Willys that was ever made, and including he has a prototype car that actually never even went into production. It's just an amazing collection, and he's into Oldsmobiles and 57 Chevrolets, and he's amassed this amazing car collection. But it occurred to him at some point that because of his passion for drag racing in general and the Lions Drag Strip in particular, that he would set aside a portion of his museum, his personal collection, to honor Lions Drag Strip. And he endeavored to get that program started several years ago. And he enlisted some people that were involved in the drag racing community back in the golden era to assist with the design and whatever. And his concept was to pretty much more or less duplicate the aura, physical and emotional aura, that personified Lions Drag Strip. So he set aside part of his former warehouse building here that houses his car collection. And one of the people that he got involved very early on was my lifelong partner, Mike Cool, who Rick Lorenzen commissioned to build a blown Chrysler gasoline-burning engine for one of his Willys gassers. And because of that relationship that developed, we both became aware of his intention early on. And Mike Cool used to say to me before I ever saw his collection, "You got to meet this guy. You're not going to believe what he's up to. And he's going to build a museum to honor Lions Drag Strip." And I went, "You got to be kidding me, really?" I mean, we all who grew up there have such a tremendous passion for Lions Drag Strip, but I never imagined that somebody would actually build a museum about it. But Rick did, and he set aside one part of the building here that was previously a warehouse space for his Price Transfer business, and he hired some artists, primarily Kenny Youngblood, with a couple of Kenny's assistants to do some murals to duplicate the physical presence of Lions drag strip. And it was a years-long process that evolved very slowly. As it neared its completion, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to house all of the memorabilia and the cars that he wanted to related to Lions, and so he actually constructed an additional add-on. This back part of the museum was constructed after the original concept was developed because he needed more space to spread his vision of what the museum should be and how it should honor the Lions drag strip. In 2019, they had a grand opening here and had a huge extravaganza with dozens of cackle cars of the era, and invited people in. It was there were no tickets sold or anything. It was free to anybody and everybody, and there were food concessions and whatever, and it was a day-long extravaganza that ended with a massive cackle fest that Steve Gibbs helped to organize and orchestrated, and it was just a marvelous event. And it was done in preparation for the opening of the Automobilia collection and the Lions Drag Strip Museum, when, of course, in 2020, the COVID pandemic hit and put a screeching halt to everything. The bad news was that it was impossible to open the museum to the general public at that time due to the restrictions in Los Angeles County over attendance and whatever, understandably. I guess the benefit, though, was the fact that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, Rick and his staff here were able to expand the museum to the new addition, solicit contributions or the loaning of memorabilia, display cases honoring some of the people who were instrumental in motorsports in Southern California, and he expanded his view of the museum to include more than just Lions drag strip. The Long Beach Grand Prix, Long Beach Marine Stadium, where circle boat races and drag boat races were held, Ascot Park Speedway, a half-mile dirt track in Gardena, and all of that is part of the future plans. Some of it's been completed, some of it's in the construction stages now, and of course there's an event center here that will be able to accommodate groups of up to 300 people for formal sit-down dinners and banquets and whatever. The purpose of the foundation is to honor the history of motorsport in Southern California with a very strong emphasis on Lions drag strip, which he considered, and I think many people probably considered, to in that era have been the epicenter of motorsport in Southern California. And I must tell you that the first time I ever walked in here and saw what had been done, the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I really felt like I was transported back 50 years in life. I attended my first drag race at Lions in 1957 and attended as a spectator for many years, and then ultimately competed there with a junior fuel dragster and a series of top fuel dragsters, culminating in 1972 at the last drag race, which was the last event ever held there. And to walk into this museum and feel like I was there is just an amazing feeling that's very hard to describe.
Well, and I'm not just going to take your word for it, because Jerry Newman came wandering back through here before and said, absolutely astounding. It's like being transported back in time. Yeah. So I guess, and we've gone over this ground before many times, but the last race at Lions, for me is just one of those epic events that there's only a few events in American history on the entertainment side, let's call it entertainment. Woodstock, the last race at Lions, are two of them that come right to the top of my mind. But for you winning that emotionally, what was that? I mean, you won a national event, but the last race at Lions emotionally, what was that like for you? Was that the quintessential race for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and in all honesty, I find it difficult to put the emotions that I felt at and after that event into words, because it was so overwhelming. Like I said, I grew up there. I was just a young teenage enthusiast, racing fanatic. My first love was dirt oval racing here locally at a place called Gardena Stadium and then Ascot Park Speedway. But when I saw my first drag race at Lions in 1957 and saw cars going 180 miles an hour, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And to be able to evolve from that perspective as a young boy watching cars go fast and idolizing people like Leonard Harris and the Albertson Olds, TV Tommy Ivo, Jack Chrisman, Art Chrisman, those people that were my heroes, up to the point of competing at the very highest level at Lions and being fortunate enough to win that iconic event, unquestionably stands as the highlight of my time in drag racing.
So, Jack Chrisman, that's a name familiar to Lions, familiar to Southern California, and his daughter, Lana, is actually on the board of directors here. Why don't you tell us about Lana, her involvement in this whole project?
Lana Chrisman is a board member and the executive director of the Lions Automobilia Foundation. She, along with a gentleman named Rod Marchese, are very instrumental in running the day-to-day operations here. Rob on the physical side of it, and Lana looks after all of the foundation's goals, objectives, programs and services. And I want to emphasize that the foundation isn't just dedicated to the museum and the car collection, but it's a living, breathing, very dynamic effort that includes youth engagement, training and education, dealing with school children all the way from elementary school through junior high, high school, junior college, and college. People going for graduate degrees that are into the advancement of automotive style and mechanics are all involved in programs here that are expanding constantly, and the objective of the foundation is to support people who have a passion and a love for automobiles, whether they be vintage automobiles, production automobiles, custom cars, or cars of the future, which will obviously include electric vehicles and things like that as well.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that about this foundation, because that's the future of, it's the future of all of this, and if we're going to have a future in drag racing, it's got to be started young, and I think unfortunately there's been a little bit of a gap there right now, which is why we're seeing some dwindling numbers with people attending drag races. But you, and I know John Toll's involved with Hot Rodders of Tomorrow, and there's a couple of other organizations out there that are doing this, so that's a great thing. So what is the future? You've got over here, you've got the new, what are you calling that area?
The Lions Event Center.
Event Center. You've got a new event center that's being built. What does the future look like here? I didn't realize it. I'd never thought about it. You guys were closed almost immediately after you opened because of COVID. So this is really kind of a coming out time for you guys.
Yeah.
What's the future look like here?
The future looks very, very bright. Right now, the collection and the museum are open to the general public only on Saturdays, because this is a working facility. For people who have never been here, who come here for the first time, have a hard time believing when they drive up that this is here, because it looks like an industrial building, which is exactly what it is. But we envision being able to open to the general public on a more regular basis. Almost every Saturday here, a local car club has an event where they bring cars into the parking area outside. We set up food concessions. For no charge whatsoever, people are invited to participate in those activities, see those cars, and then if they want to come in and view the collection and go through the museum, there's a very, very nominal admission fee that helps to pay the overhead of the museum. But we're going to expand in the event center, for instance, to having formal events for local clubs and businesses that are looking for the type of facility where they can have a formal sit-down dinner, or they can have a banquet, or something of that nature, or just a general meeting, and at the same time have the additional exposure to the collection and the museum, which I think probably enhances the experience. And we are currently booked solid with car club events for all of 2023 on the Saturday events, and we are getting bookings already for the event center, which will only be open for activity starting with the big Lions Last Drag Race Golden Anniversary event, a sit-down dinner that's going to take place on December 3rd. But from December 3rd of this year on, that event center is probably going to be used on a very regular basis for events that will expose any number of people to what Rick has created here.
I hadn't even thought about that, Carl. 50 years. That's amazing, isn't it? How time flies. Interestingly enough, the last drag race took place on December 1st and 2nd in 1972. It is amazing that it's 50 years, but unfortunately, I've been doing so much traveling lately. I wish I could come out for that event, because that would be an epic event to be at. Well, I wish you could as well. And it's going to be much more than just the golden anniversary of the last drag race. It will be the inauguration of the first 5 members of the Lions Hall of Fame, which will be honoring iconic people within the industry and motorsports during the golden era. Not only for drag racing, but for all forms of motorsport in Southern California. And it's an event that will become an annual event where we will induct probably 4 or 5 inductees every year to honor those who built the infrastructure that is motorsport in Southern California. Well, I'm glad that the future is bright for the museum, because to me and what we do here, I agree that Lions Drag Strip is the heart of drag racing in the golden era, if we want to call it that. And Carl, I appreciate you taking a few moments here to talk with us. And everybody, as you can see behind us, this is something else. Walking in the door here, I'm blown away by what I see here. So for me, this was a first time to ever be on the drag strip at Lions, even though it doesn't exist anymore. So Carl, we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to chatting with you again. My pleasure, always. Thank you for what you do, Randy. It's something that we all love and appreciate. My pleasure.